Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Tech Trends. I'm Olayemi Oshidende. On the program this week, Nigerian startup SnapPay Payments Technologies is changing how we make payments using facial recognition instead of OTP. African startups have raised over $1 billion in just 5 months this year. So coming up later is my interview with Peter Adeyemi, CEO and co-founder of Cubes. We'll be talking about what's driving the funding surge and how Nigerian startups can stay ahead. We'll give you more in just a moment. Do stay with us. This is Tech Trends, and I'm Olayemi Oshidende.
Invention requires two things. One, the ability to try a lot of experiments, and two, not having to live with the collateral damage of failed experiments.
This week on Tech Her Out, we spotlight a woman protecting Africa's future and bringing thousands along with her. Let's tech her out. She's known as the relatable cybersecurity leader, but to her social media fans, she's simply a sissy that's also a nerd. Confidence Stavely is a cybersecurity professional, inclusion advocate, and a cyber talent developer with over a decade experience in technology. She's the founder and executive director of Cyber Safe Foundation, a non-governmental organization dedicated to improving inclusive and safe digital access in Africa. They've educated over 24,000 young women in becoming tech and cyber workers. Through her foundation, Confidence is helping to protect the most vulnerable people and businesses. She leads the Cyber Girls Fellowship, now active in 7 African countries and training over 3,000 young women in cybersecurity. She's developed cybersecurity toolkits for schools, small businesses, and even senior citizens. And yes, she's also the author of API Security for White Hat Hackers. The world has taken notice. She's a 2-time Cybersecurity Woman of the Year and was named Cybersecurity Woman of the World, chosen from over 160 global nominees. Confidence believes what we can see, we can become. Nothing was handed to her, she built it. And now she's making sure thousands of girls can too. And that's why this week on Tech Trends, we tech her out.
A homegrown tech startup, SnapPay Payments Technologies, has introduced a new layer of security for digital payments using facial recognition technology. Developed by Africans for Africans, the solution is the continent's first facial recognition-based payment and authentication system, offering banks and fintechs a smarter, more secure alternative to the traditional OTP method.
My name is Adeyemo Abraham. I'm the founder and CEO of SnapPay Payment Technologies. I'm a very passionate person, and once I set my heart to achieve or accomplish a task, I always see it through to the end. I'm very dogged, and I'm unrelenting. No matter how much obstacles or challenges I face, I always endeavor to see how I scale at the end of the day.
My name is Kabir Okeleye. I'm the CTO and co-founder of SnapPay Technologies. I'm a great problem solver because I believe humanity got up to this point due to our ability to solve problems, and which I intend to continue to do. So I kind of love challenges, which have pushed me this far, and which was one of the reasons why I even joined SnapPay in the first place.
These two relentless young men are on a clear mission to change the way Africans prove who they are. Driven by resilience and the love for solving complex problems, the co founders of SnapPay aren't just building tech, they're changing how identity verification works in Africa.
SnapPay is a facial recognition verification provider. We provide facial recognition verification for banks and fintech companies, specifically as an alternative to the OTP system. Uh, Over 90% of transactions in Africa today is still being authenticated using the OTP. So our solution is to provide a more secure, more effective alternative in the form of facial recognition.
This isn't related to the SMS based OTPs we've all grown used to. They're building something smarter and far more secure.
There are lots of research that has gone into addressing how facial recognition technology is going to be the mainstream form of authentication. According to several research, one of which is Juniper, there's a lot of focus to how consumers today are comfortable with biometric solution as an alternative, as a means of authentication. So that's why we are rightly at the forefront of bringing this revolution into the African market.
It's a timely move, especially as research shows a growing comfort with biometric solutions globally. But for SnapPay, this is beyond global trends. It's about fixing a problem that hits closer to home. Because while facial recognition is rising worldwide, it hasn't always worked fairly, especially for people of color.
Right from inception of facial recognition, there's actually always been a bias towards people of color, where we have many cases in the US where people have been misidentified to issues around fraud and all. And the reason for that majorly is the data models that were used to train these algorithms. They are mostly Caucasian faces. They have lower access to people of color, which resulted in the system being able to recognize the people of the Caucasian better than we. So with SnapPay, we have a model to have lots of dark faces to test to more or less like train our algorithm. That way we can ensure that the same way the facial recognition that exists today is able to correctly identify Caucasian, the same will happen to the black people. That way we can mitigate the issue around misidentification that is taking place today.
And that's why SnapPay is training its AI model differently, with real African faces and real local data, putting inclusion at the heart of the operations. It all started during the COVID-19 pandemic when a simple errand sparked a bigger idea. SnapPay's original plan was to let people walk into stores and pay with just their face. No phone, no cards, no cash. But the cost of hardware made the model hard to scale. So they pivoted, not away from the vision, but to something more scalable.
The idea behind Snappy, spanned out of the pandemic at the height of COVID. I remember vividly that I wanted to withdraw from the ATM, but there was no cash, and we thought of let us see how we could bring about a system that people can make payments on the go without having to use cash or bank cards. And the get-go solution that we figured out was facial recognition. And so we set it out to create a payment solution whereby people can walk into a certain store, and rather than paying with cash or your bank card or having to even to need your mobile device, you can just make payment with your face. And that was what we set it out to do initially. But we had to pivot, and the reason why we had to pivot was because that particular model required a lot of hardware. We needed to deploy certain devices to certain merchants, to certain stores, and as a startup, that was pretty expensive for us. So we decided to pivot to be able to create a software as a solution service for businesses, for banks and fintech companies that can leverage our technology to perform facial recognition authentication for their customers.
To train the facial recognition engine, the company works with a data aggregator. But they don't just scrape the web. Every dataset comes with consent, and in some cases, compensation is offered.
The company called Recognize, which is a data aggregator. So they get their data through various means, such as people coming to the platform to provide data in order for us to enhance AI. There are also some particular schemes that are in place whereby people are paid to drop their information, because these are sensitive information and we can't just take it without the consent of the individual. So there's an incentive scheme from Recognize which facilitates people to be able to provide their information for a certain benefit, right? So once the data is acquired, there's already a disclaimer which says what the data purpose is for, which is to enhance the current AI technology that we have today. So aside from that, anybody also coming to the platform to donate or probably give out their information are also being part of a revolutionizing activities around AI, because at the end of the day, once we are able to get everything right, every people benefits from it.
It's a model rooted in ethical AI, ensuring Africans aren't just users of new technology tools, but architects and contributors to how these systems are built and what they become. For Abraham and Kabiru, it's not just about identity or innovation, it's about inclusion and creating technology that truly sees Africa.
Did you ever wonder why unwanted emails are called spam? The term spam to describe pesky messages actually started with canned meat. In the TV show Monty Python's Flying Circus sketch, a group of Vikings repeatedly chanted spam, the brand name for canned processed meat, over and over in a cafe, drowning other dialogue. Eventually, this sketch became the perfect metaphor for unsolicited emails that keep flooding our inboxes, and spam mail was born. Spam mail, also known as junk mail, are usually messages you never asked for. Some may come from overzealous marketers, but others are more dangerous, like phishing emails attempting to steal your personal information by appearing to come from your bank or insurance company. The very first spam email was sent in 1978 by Gary Thweck, a marketing manager, to around 400 people advertising his company's new computer model. His spam efforts reportedly earned the company $13 million in sales. Today, spam is a serious issue. That's why we have spam filters and constant efforts to protect inboxes everywhere, not just emails.
African startups are gaining ground once again, crossing the $1 billion mark in funding within the first 5 months of 2025. With Nigeria pulling in over $160 million so far, questions are being asked about what's driving the momentum, where the next big opportunities lie, and how founders are navigating this funding landscape. Joining me now is Peter Adeyemi, CEO and co-founder of Cubes, to share insights on the current trends, the realities of raising capital today, and what it takes to stand out in this competitive space. Peter, seeing as we've just crossed the $1 billion mark in funding for African startups this year, earlier than we did in 2024, from where you sit, what do you think this says about the current level of investor confidence across the continent right now?
Yes, and I think we must celebrate this milestone because it's kind of like been a long time coming. We've seen funding go down over the last few years, so the fact that investors are coming back to invest in startups in Africa is something we must celebrate. I think the increase year on year between last year and this year. If we compare it, it's like 40%, and that's like if we look at the investor mindset, it just says there's like a renewed belief in the continent's ability to execute and build like innovative companies that will go on to become the unicorns. We've seen that most of the investment have been around like fintech, climate tech, health tech, um, and AI for example. So those are the places where we have seen so many investments in the past few months.
Now, narrowing in on Nigeria, the country has pulled in over $160 million so far this year, which is quite impressive. But we're currently behind Egypt and South Africa. Peter, in your opinion, what can Nigerian startups do differently or better to reclaim that top spot as the continent's leading funding destination?
A couple of things, because I think Nigeria used to be one of at least the first two in the past years. But over the years, we've also seen that number come as Africa's investment came down. But I think what Nigerian startups can do is, so maybe one, reputation needs to change, because over the years, we've also seen, because of the many stories around how some of these things were, some of the funds were used, some of the investors kind of, in quote, lost confidence. So I think the more success stories we can get out of Nigeria, for instance, the more we are able to convince investors that, yes, we are here for real, we are here to deliver. So I think that will be the first thing. The second thing is startups in Nigeria need to also focus on the emerging technology, so like AI. So if you are building something right now and you don't have like a component of AI, you're like building for the past decade. In the decade that we are in, investors want to see that you have incorporated AI. You are incorporating the emerging technologies in whatever you're doing. There's also the fact that we can also leverage maybe diaspora network in Nigeria. We've seen an increase in the diaspora actually investing in what we're doing. So I think just leveraging better on that and making sure that we can double down to take more of those investments. Then generally, the issues around Nigeria and making sure the regulatory framework is better, strengthen all the fundamentals, and all of that. So that would be like my advice.
Interestingly, we're seeing more local capital and diaspora-backed funds coming into the scene here. How has that changed the funding conversation for founders like you? Has it changed the dynamic?
Yes, and this is really important. So in the past years, I used to have conversations with investors, local investors, for context, and one of the conversations I remember very well is one guy who told me, "Hey, I have money, but I don't have patient capital, and patient capital is what you need from investors, because startup is not something you turn around in 12 months. You need 5 years or 10 years to be able to now return that money." Um, So we need more people, more local people who have like patient capital, who are able to just wait, who also understand that startup is not something you turn around in 3 months. Startup is something you invest in, and then you get the rewards, maybe 10x or 20x your investment in 5 years or 10 years. So I think that's where the thinking needs to be for local investors, but also founders like us, just understanding that um, there's still that gap in understanding for local investors. But we are seeing like more diaspora investors kind of embrace the fact they understand from wherever they are, Canada, UK, or the US, they understand how investment is made there, and they're able to they can bring that home to us and then invest in whatever we are building. I also think like improved mentorship can help. I've seen a couple of angel networks, from the diaspora coming here and just maybe create like an incubator or accelerator program that just helps um, change the game essentially.
Looking at the bigger trends here, Peter, 2025 seems to be the year of mid-sized rounds. We're seeing fewer of those massive $100 million and above raises, and more startups are landing solid $5 to $10 million rounds. Now, what's your take on this shift, and how should founders be adjusting their fundraising strategy to fit this climate?
Right. Very important question. And I think the first thing to know to be again with the investments going down, it just means that no people are not really throwing money to African startups. So whatever amount we can raise, it means we have to actually spend it wisely. In startup, there's a methodology called the lean methodology, which means like you need to actually run as lean as possible to gain as much value as possible. So that would be like my first, the first thing I think about, which is just to run lean. The second one would be to focus on milestone and the KPIs that are really important. There's always the urge to just go and, for instance, raise big money so you have like a large runway, and you're not really caring about metrics that are important, the KPIs that are important. But what we are now learning is if you get 100,000, you have to focus on the important things. So, like, what's your revenue already? How many are using? How active are they? So those are the things I think one should really focus on. Yeah, I think those two things, maybe with capital efficiency as well. How what's the ratio of the inputs to the outputs? How efficient can you use that fund?
Well, it's interesting to see climate tech, health tech, and AI startups getting a lot more attention. For founders building outside of those hot sectors right now, do you think there's pressure to pivot, or is there still room for ideas that sit outside these current trends?
I think is 1000% important. If I can use that, we have seen um, like there's literally nobody. Maybe there will still be some people, but most people know about AI right now. So if you are building your product and you don't have AI in there, you are doing something wrong. Um, I am building a solution for students, and there's AI in there where they can deepen their learning. They can help, you know, they can help themselves understand the subject matter more. They can double click on the material. They have like a personal tutor. And that's what I think everybody else should also do. So no matter what you're building, there's an element of AI that can help you either speed up your work internally or your users. You can also help them. But climate tech and health tech are also seeing so much traction. For instance, before I became CEO and co-founder at Cubes, I was in an health tech insurance tech company where we onboarded like 7,000 hospitals. There's still a lot of gap in health tech, for instance, where a lot of the healthcare challenges that we have here needs to be solved with technology. So yes, I fully agree. Climate tech, health tech, AI, something definitely like a lot of founders should look at. If you look around you as a founder or as someone who is interested in entrepreneurship, you find so many opportunities around those areas.
And finally, Peter, while Q1 was relatively strong, Q2 started a little slow. Now, some say we are on track for another big year, but some others aren't so sure. From your perspective, what do you think the rest of the year holds? Are you sensing continued momentum or more cautious investor behavior as we go forward?
I think maybe it's not fully over the funding winter, but I think we are now in the green for the most part. So we are seeing like a lot more invest return. For instance, Cubes, my company, is in the Antler program. Antler is a global day zero investor. They just got to Nigeria, and this is their first cohort. So we are seeing like a lot more people return. So I'm very positive that will actually beat the last 2 years, for instance. So I think the last part of the year will actually be better than the first half. I think the trajectory will keep going up like that for the coming years as well, as more opportunities open, as people keep building like very interesting and innovative technology, and just naturally growth in the market will keep going up.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Peter Adeyemi, CEO and co-founder of Cubes.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a wrap on this week's episode of Tech Trends. I hope you enjoyed the episode and picked up something new along the way. Remember, Tech Trends is here to keep you updated on insights, trends, and developments happening in the tech space. Also, don't forget you can catch all of our episodes on the channel's TV YouTube account. Make sure to watch, share, and like your favorite editions. For Tech Trends, I'm Olayemi Oshidende, and I'll see you next time.